Listen to me. Proof of citizenship, now.
Why are you stopping me? I didn't do anything.
Don't play games, ID, passport, something.
I'm an American veteran, Afghanistan. You don't get to talk to me like this.
We get to do whatever's necessary. Papers or cuffs, your choice.
All right, you want proof? Fine. But remember this.
The Lowe's home improvement parking lot in San Antonio was baking under the brutal Texas sun. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday. Heat shimmered off the asphalt in visible waves, the digital bank sign across the street flashing 102 degrees. Natasha Reeves had just finished loading lumber into the bed of her pickup truck materials for the deck she was building in her backyard. She was 34. A faded Spurs t-shirt clung to her back, jeans worn in, work boots still dusty from the lumber aisle. Nothing about her looked remarkable at first glance, unless you noticed the way she moved. Alert. Grounded. A quiet awareness forged by years of watching for danger. She reached for the driver's door. That's when she heard boots behind her fast, deliberate, purposeful. 3 federal agents closed in, tactical vests tied across their chests, ice badges catching the sunlight. They were part of a joint task force with the San Antonio Police Department, acting on an intelligence bulletin about alleged document fraud networks operating in the area. Their briefing authorized targeted inquiries at commercial locations suspected of employing fraudulent paperwork. Whether that intelligence was legitimate or simply cover for broad enforcement sweeps would later become a central issue in court. A security camera mounted on a light pole near the garden center captured everything. The sun was so bright the shadows were sharp and short. Visibility was perfect. Timestamp 14:15:37. The lead agent Hayes was broad-shouldered, confident, moving like a man who'd never been challenged. Morton flanked his right. Lynn took the left. All 3 body cameras were already rolling. All 3 assumed this would be routine. Stop. Demand papers. Move on. They had no idea they were approaching a former Army intelligence officer, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Bronze Star for Valor, trained in documentation analysis, interrogation, and strategic thinking. A woman who had survived environments where a single mistake meant death, and who learned long ago to stay several steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Or in this case, the parking lot. "Ma'am, Immigration and Customs Enforcement," Hayes called out, one hand resting near his weapon. The camera caught his posture aggressive, confrontational. "We need to see your identification and proof of citizenship." Natasha turned slowly, deliberately. Hands visible, her stance relaxed but balanced. No fear on her face. Just calculation. "On what grounds?" she asked calmly. "What probable cause do you have to stop me?" Hayes stepped closer. Morton slid to her right, Lynn to her left. A textbook containment formation. "We're conducting a targeted inquiry," Hayes said. "There have been reports of document fraud in this commercial area." "Document fraud," Natasha repeated, her eyes moving from one agent to the next. "What specific information connects me to that crime?" "What description were you given?" She paused. "Because if you're stopping me based solely on how I look in this parking lot, that's not a targeted inquiry. That's racial profiling. You saw a black woman loading lumber and decided to demand papers. Am I wrong?" Lynn shifted uncomfortably. Hayes didn't. "If you're here legally, this will only take 5 minutes," Hayes said, stepping even closer. "Just show us your documents." "I don't have to show you anything without probable cause," Natasha replied, her voice steady and clear, picked up by body cams and the security mic alike. "The Fourth Amendment protects me from unreasonable seizures. This stop is unconstitutional, and I'm not complying just because you have badges." Hayes' jaw tightened in the harsh sunlight. "Refusing to cooperate makes this suspicious," he said. "Show ID now, or you're coming with us." That's when her intelligence training took over, not combat instinct, but strategy. Control the information, control the outcome. She slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, careful, deliberate, visible. "I'm recording this interaction," she announced. Nearby shoppers stopped. A man loading mulch froze mid-motion. Witnesses formed organically, just as the camera captured it all. "I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment rights," Natasha continued. "I'm a U.S. Army veteran, honorably discharged. 2 tours in Afghanistan. My truck has veteran plates, you can see them behind me. You have no probable cause. and I do not consent to any search or detention." Then she did something the agents didn't expect. She tapped a contact and put the phone on speaker. She'd saved the number years earlier, after watching ICE agents harass her neighbor, a U.S. citizen of 30 years who simply looked vulnerable enough to target. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The call connected. "This is attorney Diana Velasquez with the Texas Civil Rights Project," a sharp, professional voice answered. "Who am I speaking with?" The camera caught the moment Hayes realized this wasn't going as planned. Morton glanced at Lynn, their confidence drained in real time. "Ma'am, you can't," Hayes began. "I absolutely can," Natasha cut in. "I'm being detained without probable cause. I have invoked my Fourth Amendment rights, and they're continuing to hold me without articulating any specific crime." "This call is being recorded," Velasquez said through the speaker. "Officers, what is your probable cause for this stop? Be specific." Silence. Four figures stood frozen under the blazing sun. Timestamp 14:18:45, 46:47. Finally, Hayes spoke. "We're conducting a targeted inquiry related to document fraud in this area. What specific, articulable facts connect my client to document fraud?" Velasquez pressed, her voice slicing through the heat. "What description were you given?" The attorney pressed. "What evidence do you have that she's involved in any criminal activity? What makes this a targeted stop rather than a random demand for papers based on appearance?" Silence again. The parking lot kept moving around the frozen standoff. Cars rolled in and out. Shoppers passed with carts. Some slowed, others stopped completely. Phones began to rise. A woman in a Lowe's vest stood near the entrance, one hand covering her mouth. A man in a pickup slowed to a crawl, window down, phone clearly recording. Natasha didn't move. She stood perfectly still, phone extended, her free hand visible at her side, not resisting. Not fleeing, not giving them a single thing they could twist against her, just standing in the middle of a public parking lot, forcing the agents to do one of two things: articulate probable cause or expose that they had none. The security camera captured her posture, relaxed but ready, the stance of someone trained to wait, to assess, to act only when necessary. "We have discretion to verify immigration status under our operational directive," Hayes finally said. He stepped closer. His hand drifted toward her arm. "Should federal agents be allowed to demand citizenship papers without probable cause?" Comment below. This wasn't about border security. This was about whether the Constitution protected a black veteran the same way it protected everyone else, or whether service meant nothing once appearance became the trigger. "Discretion is not a blank check," Velasquez said sharply through the phone. "You need reasonable suspicion. Do you have it? Can you articulate it?" Hayes ignored her. "Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us for processing." He reached for Natasha's arm. She took one measured step back, not aggressive, not evasive, just distance, controlled, defensive. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had given orders in combat zones. "I'm not resisting. I'm not fleeing. I'm standing in a public parking lot where I have every right to be. You are attempting to seize me without probable cause." "Attorney Velasquez, are you recording this?" Natasha asked. Every word Velasquez confirmed. "Officers, if you detain my client without probable cause, you are violating clearly established constitutional rights." She has invoked them explicitly. "Any further detention is unlawful." Hayes grabbed her arm anyway. The security camera captured his hand closing around her bicep, captured Natasha's body tense, but she did not pull away. "I am not resisting," she said loudly, projecting to the growing crowd. "I am being seized against my will without probable cause. I am a U.S. citizen. I am a combat veteran. I served this country in Afghanistan, and I am documenting this constitutional violation." She allowed him to pull her hands behind her back, allowed the cuffs to snap closed, all while keeping her phone active, speaker on, her attorney listening to every sound. The camera showed Hayes wrenching her arms back harder than necessary. Morton shifted uncomfortably. Lynn scanned the crowd, his hand hovering near his weapon, nervous now, aware of the audience. "Badge numbers?" Natasha said calmly. All three of you? Names? Badge numbers? Supervisor contact? You'll get that at processing, Hayes said, gripping her arm as he steered her toward their SUV. The camera followed until they moved out of frame. Am I under arrest? Natasha asked clearly. If so, state the charges. You're required to read me my Miranda rights. You're being detained for processing. Hayes replied, a distinction without substance, but enough to give him cover. Detention requires reasonable suspicion, Natasha countered. Arrest requires probable cause. Which is it? Because you have neither. They reached the black federal SUV, tinted windows swallowing the scene. The rear door opened. Natasha stopped moving, not resisting, simply refusing to cooperate further. I am not getting in that vehicle, she said evenly. I have not been lawfully detained. I have not been charged with a crime. I am a United States citizen invoking my right to remain here. Get in the vehicle, Hayes ordered, pushing against her back. Years of physical training made her immovable when she chose to be. I'm not resisting, she repeated, but I am not voluntarily complying with an unlawful order. If you put me in that vehicle, you are kidnapping me. Officers, Velasquez's voice cut in from the phone, still clutched behind Natasha's back. You are now on notice. This detention is unlawful. My client has invoked her Fourth Amendment rights, identified herself as a U.S. citizen and veteran, and committed no crime. Removing her from this location violates clearly established law and carries civil and potential criminal consequences. Hayes hesitated. Morton spoke for the first time. Maybe we should call a supervisor. We don't need a supervisor, Hayes snapped, though his voice lacked confidence. Lynn was already backing away, distancing himself from the decision. The crowd had grown to at least 15 people, phones everywhere. The Lowe's employee was on her phone, now likely management or security. This had become a scene. Scenes meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant accountability. Badge number 7294, Natasha said loudly, reading Hayes's vest. Agent Hayes. Badge 5831, Agent Morton. Badge 6103, Agent Lynn. San Antonio Icefield office. Attorney Velasquez, did you get that? I did, Velasquez replied. I'm notifying your San Antonio office right now. Your supervisor will contact you within minutes. I strongly suggest you release my client immediately. The standoff dragged on for 3 more minutes. Natasha stood handcuffed but unbroken. Hayes held her arm, visibly unsure. Morton and Lynn drifted farther away. The crowd recorded everything. Then Hayes's radio crackled. Agent Hayes, this is Supervisor Thornton. Stand down. Release the subject immediately. Return to the office. Hayes's face flushed anger, humiliation, disbelief. He uncuffed Natasha roughly. Red marks already bloomed around her wrists. I want a complaint form, Natasha said calmly. I'm filing for Fourth Amendment violations, racial profiling, unlawful detention, and excessive force. You can file that at the office, Hayes muttered, already turning away. No, Natasha said. I'm going to the ACLU, I'm going to my attorney, and then I'm suing every one of you personally and professionally because what you did today was illegal, unconstitutional, and recorded. She held up her phone. Hayes drove off without a word. Morton and Lynn followed in a second vehicle, both visibly shaken. Natasha remained in the parking lot, rubbing her wrists, looking directly at the security camera. She had noticed it the moment she parked. Old habits. Intelligence work. Always know where the cameras are. Always control the recorded narrative. Natasha, are you okay? Velasquez asked. I'm okay, Natasha replied, her voice finally trembling now that the danger had passed. Shaken. But okay, they didn't get what they wanted. What they wanted doesn't matter, Velasquez said firmly. What they did was illegal. I'm requesting the security footage and their body cams right now. 2 weeks later, the lawsuit was filed. Dr. Natasha Reeves v. United States of America. Agent Hayes. Agent Morton. Agent Lynn. Fourth Amendment violation. Unlawful seizure. Detention without probable cause. Excessive force. Racial profiling. Selective enforcement. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from first approach to exit. Audio capturing every invocation of rights. Body cams filling in the rest. Timestamps proving an 18-minute detention without justification. The government offered $50,000 to settle. Velasquez laughed. Your agents handcuffed a combat veteran in a parking lot for being black while buying lumber? Try again. They offered $200,000. Still insulting. The case went to trial 15 months later. The courtroom was packed. Veterans in uniform, civil rights groups. Media coverage wall to wall. And 12 Texans watched the footage, faces shifting from confusion to disbelief to anger. They saw everything. And so did the jury. The footage ran for 40 minutes, every angle, every moment. The afternoon sun exposing everything. Undeniable. Irrefutable. Natasha testified for 7 hours over 3 days. She walked the jury through her service, 2 tours in Afghanistan, a Bronze Star for valor. After saving 3 soldiers during an ambush by calling in air support under direct fire, she recounted the bitter irony, serving her country in combat zones, only to be treated like a criminal in a parking lot for buying lumber. She explained her intelligence training, how to document everything, control information, stay 3 steps ahead. I knew the parking lot had a security camera, she told the jury. I positioned myself in view, kept my hands visible, announced every action, invoked my rights clearly and repeatedly. I did everything right, and they still violated my constitutional rights. The last witness, Supervisor Thornton, the man whose radio call had ended the standoff, testified under oath. The agents had no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, no justification. The courtroom erupted. The defense tried qualified immunity, tried to claim the agents acted in good faith. Velasquez dismantled the argument, entering the ICE training manuals into evidence. They knew the rules. Reasonable suspicion required, anonymous tips insufficient, racial profiling prohibited. They knew the rules. Velasquez told the jury in closing. They just didn't think the rules applied when the target was a black woman in a parking lot. The jury deliberated 6 days. Natasha spent them at home, working on her deck, trying to pretend her life wasn't resting in the hands of 12 strangers. Then the call came. She was in her truck, hands shaking. Verdict's in. Get to the courthouse, Velasquez said. The courtroom was packed. The jury filed in. The foreman, a retired teacher named Patricia Gonzalez, stood and read the words that would change Natasha's life. We find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Cheers. Tears, relief. The damages phase took another week. The jury heard how Natasha suffered PTSD not from combat, but from being handcuffed and detained in her hometown. Other veterans spoke about the betrayal of serving a country that treated them as enemies. Economists detailed the value of constitutional rights and what price should be paid when government violates them. When the jury announced damages, even Velasquez looked stunned. $4.3 million compensatory, $3.3 million punitive. Total $7.6 million. Hayes was terminated. Morton resigned. Lynn moved to a desk job, far from field work. The months that followed brought agency-wide reviews. ICE's San Antonio field office updated training to reinforce Fourth Amendment protections, proper documentation for targeted inquiries, and supervisory oversight protocols. Natasha used part of her settlement to establish the Veterans Rights Defense Fund, providing free legal services to veterans facing discrimination. She became a national civil rights speaker. Her parking lot standoff became a case study in asserting rights under pressure. The camera footage became training material not just for law enforcement, but for civilians learning to assert their rights. And in San Antonio, at that Lowe's parking lot where she was seized without cause, the security camera still records in high definition. Because sometimes the cameras that watch us can protect us, if we're brave enough to stand in their view and refuse to back down. If you believe veterans deserve better, if the Fourth Amendment still matters, if standing up for your rights is the most American thing you can do, hit subscribe and the notification bell. More stories are coming that will make you see your rights differently, because freedom isn't free.